Mint is one of the easiest herbs to grow, but it's also one of the easiest to get wrong. I've seen it completely take over gardens. No wonder it's got a reputation for being a bit of a thug. Today I'm going to show you how to grow vibrant, flavour-packed mint without it getting out of hand. Get it right and you'll have an endless supply of mint for teas, salads, pestos and of course, mojitos. So let's begin our minty quest by looking at the sorts of conditions that mint really thrives in. Now, mint is an incredibly versatile herb, both in the garden and in the kitchen, of course, and it thrives in any moderately fertile, moist soil or potting mix. Mint does really well in a sunny spot, but will also thrive in a part shaded spot. So if you've got a niggly, shadier corner, then mint could grow really well there. And in fact, if you're in a hot climate, then some shade may really do it proud to help it hold on to moisture for a bit longer. Mint is a lush, fleshy herb and naturally quite thirsty, so getting enough moisture to it is important. In containers, you'll need to keep a close eye and water regularly, but in the ground here, I hardly ever have to water my mint. In fact, this mint here has never been watered and it's thrived even in this hot summer. Now I'm taking cuttings here from material that hasn't got any flowers on it. That's important. These are really beautiful for all sorts of insect life, but for cuttings we need clean vegetative growth. So I have my material to work with and the next job is just to trim them up into a cutting size. Now, as I said, they want to be about 10 to 15 centimetres or 4 to 6 inches long, and I make a cut just at the bottom, just below a leaf node where the leaf joins the main stem like that. That's perfect. Now these are losing a lot of water through the leaves, which is quite stressful when you've not got any roots. So the next job is just to trim our cutting up like this by removing the majority of the leaves like that. And most of the new roots that will form will come from these little leaf nodes here. So let's trim them all up and then I'll show you what to do with them next. So here are my prepared cuttings. Now you want to work fairly quickly in warm weather as they will start to root. So I'm just going to pop them in the water there. Now you've got two ways of rooting them. One is to simply leave them in the water. So just make sure the leaves are sticking out like that and then put this somewhere warm and sunny and the roots will quite quickly appear. The other option is to just root them in potting mix. Now I'm using an all-purpose potting mix. I'm not going to bother to do anything with it, no sieving or screening, and I'm also not going to add any hormone rooting powder or gel, which you sometimes do with cuttings. Mint is so easy to propagate, and I just stick it in like that and it's job done. Growing your cuttings in water is certainly the lowest maintenance option because you simply need to change out the water every now and then pot on the cuttings once they are rooted. But growing in potting mix like this means you can delay potting them up a bit longer and let the roots grow out a bit more. It's really up to you which method you prefer. The great thing about mint is that it is so easy to propagate and root so readily, it doesn't really matter. That's about perfect. Now this will go in a relatively bright but fairly shaded spot, and this, as I said, will be in the sun because it's got plenty of water to draw on. Now there's no bag going over this or anything like that. I just need to water it and set it on its way, and then it's really good to go. Our cuttings in water can be potted into their own pots individually once they've got many more roots and are looking like they've put on fresh growth. And the same with your potting mix cuttings. Once you see fresh growth and the evidence of roots at the bottom, you can jiggle it out of the pot, tease apart your cuttings and pot them on into their own. Now I took some cuttings about 2 weeks ago and I wanted to show you the progress of them. You can see here there's already some brilliant white roots coming out of the stems. They're not quite ready to pot on and grow on just yet, but it's really encouraging to see them starting to root. Now if you don't have any mint, then do ask a minty neighbour for some of theirs, or just buy yourself a packet of mint. Now this is really fresh stuff here, really good condition, and it costs about 50 pence or just over $1/2, and there's some really lovely material here to work with. Look at that. I can trim this up in exactly the same way as I did with my apple mint, making cuts, removing the lowest leaves, and then growing it on in water or potting mix. Perfect. What I love about mint is the many different types you can grow. Let's take a look at a few of them. Your classic mints are your peppermint or spearmint. Just like your apple mint here, these are great for drinks as well as things like ice creams. Every garden needs some of this stuff. And then there are the many mints named after what they smell like. Now we've looked at apple mint, but there's also banana mint, pineapple mint, orange mint, and then something like this here. This is lime mint, and if I pick off a leaf and smell it, oh, it really does smell like lime. I wish this was smell-o-vision. This is a real feast for the nose. Then there's chocolate mint with its beautifully dark, almost mahogany coloured stems, and of course, irresistible chocolatey scent, perfect for a chocolate and mint ice cream perhaps. And finally, let me show you this guy here. It looks like a creeping thyme, doesn't it? But this is Corsican mint. Loves a lovely moist and actually very shaded spot and would look beautiful creeping out over paving slabs, for example. Why not grow a selection to enjoy? Mints can honestly form a whole herb collection in their own right. But what about it spreading, I hear you ask? Won't mint take over my garden? Well, come over here and let me show you what this is all about. Now look at this mint. It's absolutely bursting to get out of this pot. Look at it. And if I take off the pot, we can have a closer look and see what this is all about. Here you can see the thick massive roots. This is desperate to get potted on. But look at these guys here. They're like little creeping ground level stems. These are the rhizomes. And what happens is these will spread out on the ground, produce roots. There's a tiny one there, in fact. Root, produce a new clump, and then carry on their travels. And this spreading, creeping habit is what makes it actually a really convenient, low maintenance ground cover. Now you can always grow it somewhere that you can easily keep it in control. This is in my lawn here, which is long overdue a cut. So when I come through and cut along here, well, these guys will be naturally cut off and the plant will be kept in trim. But you have to admire the resilience of mint and its determination. What a trooper. But really the very simplest way to contain mint is to grow it in a container, a literal container. Now this certainly needs potting on into its own bigger container, so let's go and do that. We've got a choice of pots for our mint. Now the simplest one is a plastic pot. It'll need watering less often, but a terracotta pot like this looks so much more attractive, but it will wick out the moisture a bit more, so you'll need to water it more often. A solution is to line it with some sort of plastic, making sure to punch a hole in the bottom for the drainage. And then there's something like a beautiful glazed pot like this, which is a good sort of halfway house compromise. I'm going to go for a terracotta pot, and because it's late summer and plenty of rain is on the cards, I'm just going to leave it like it is. Now I'm using just an all-purpose potting mix. This has actually got a mix with slightly bit of soil in it, which will help to reduce the time between waterings. Now look at this, it's really root bound, so I'm going to be really quite rough with it to get these roots out into the fresh compost. You can just dig like this. Looks a bit violent, but this is absolutely fine and will just stimulate new fresh roots to go into our mix. Looks a bit of a state, doesn't it? But that's perfect. And then just pot it up as normal and we'll trim it down in a bit. It's a handsome looking plant, but this is a bit too lanky and not a good shape. So what I'm going to do is cut it down. Now if you come here, I'll show you what we're going to aim for. You can see there's lots of fresh growth at the bottom. This is really great, but I'm also going to cut these tall stems down to a leaf node, and if you look closely you can see two little shoots either side. So these will replace the stem that's cut and produce two new stems, and by doing that we'll get a slightly bushier and more compact mint that'll look a lot better. It seems a bit ruthless, but really this is going to do the mint so much good and create such a handsome plant within another couple of weeks once it reshoots. I just love the resilience of mint. I think if the bombs were to drop, mint and cockroaches maybe would be the only things that would sort of continue surviving, and this would do it with a big old smile on its face as well. Okay, that's the main sort of stems cut back. Now we've got these rhizomes here. I'm just going to trim it back down so they sit within the confines of the pot just to keep it tidy. But these might root as well and kind of help it all bush out. Now with these rhizomes, what I could do is I could just reduce it down to something like that, strip off the leaves and then put that in water, and then again I get more plants. Fantastic. None of this is going to go to waste. I'm going to love cooking with this. And here is our finished trimmed plant. Now this will be good for a whole season in a pot like this, but after maybe a year it's going to be a bit big for it, so you can pot it on up a size or split the plant to grow on. Well, we've looked at how to create new plants by taking cuttings and how to pot on existing mint, but perhaps the easiest way to grow more mint, even easier than rooting cuttings in water, is to simply split them apart, to divide them to create new plants. Dividing plants isn't difficult, and I'm going to show you how with this other lime mint I've got here. And again, we've got the same problem with this incredible root-bound nature here. But if you come closely, you can see that it's spread out a bit, and I reckon I can split this apart into certainly 2, possibly 3 separate plants. Now, mint, as we've seen, is incredibly tough, so I can get in here with a knife and literally carve it down. Just got a serrated knife from the kitchen here, and it's gone through beautifully. Now those are fine to pot on as they are, but I reckon I'm going to go again and just feed through, and you can see there's a natural split here. So I'm going to get the knife in and carry on with my delicate operation, or rather not so delicate. So something like this is absolutely perfect. Now I probably should have done this before I split them, but just cutting them back now, just to make them a bit easier to work with, that's perfect. And then to pot it on, it gets its own pot of course, and I'm using the same potting mix as before, just a soil-based mix, and no great shakes or special treatment. In it goes, and firm down like that. Splitting or dividing mint is a great way to breathe new life into your plants by giving plants more space to grow into and stimulating lots of lovely fresh growth. Hard pruning plants is a great way to kind of breathe new life into established mint plants, and it's a great way of removing any plants that are heavily diseased or damaged or got sort of pest or disease problems. Just cut plants right back to the ground to give them a new lease of life, and this will also encourage airflow, which is never a bad thing. The very best time though to give your mint a really good general prune is in the winter, or rather late winter going into spring. All the old stems will have died back, and you can just cut them right back down to ground level and let the new shoots, which should be in there right at the base, grow on and replace them. It's a fantastic way to keep your plants in mint condition. The best thing about mint, and indeed many herbs like say oregano, is that the more you harvest them, the more you encourage them to bush out, and you get even more harvests. The best time to harvest is ideally mid to late morning, when the foliage is still nice and fresh but the leaves have dried off from any night moisture. The flavour compounds are often at their highest in the morning as well. So keep on harvesting and you'll get plenty of new bushy growth and keep plants looking in tip-top shape. Regular harvesting will also keep stems from becoming too tough and woody. Now once you're finished harvesting, you can give it a good water. That's what I tend to do, not with my in-ground mint, but within pots like this. But if you're unsure, stick a finger in, and if it's dry, well, give it a good water. Now, I don't really need to give any further nutrition to my mint until maybe the very, very end of winter, when that new growth shows through. And then I can always just sprinkle on a general purpose organic fertilizer and just tickle it into the foliage, down into the crown, so it's not sitting on the foliage itself. With handfuls of harvested mint to enjoy, the question is what to do with it all, or rather, what can't you do with it? Pestos, salads, teas and cocktails, smoothies, garnishes and infused water, bath soaks and facial treatments, and the rest. Store just cut mint in the fridge, ideally in some sort of Tupperware or something, or for bigger bunches like this, just pop it in the water to keep it nice and fresh. And look, this one's even flowering, so it's going to add a touch of food for the soul as well. For more on propagating herbs by cuttings or division, please do check out the abridged version of my book. Now you can get your green fingers and thumbs on it for the princely sum of nothing at all. That's right, it's completely free to download. Just pop on over here to secure your copy. I'll catch you next time.